Parents of children who have committed unspeakable crimes, how did you react and handle it? I grew up with a pair of brothers who were involved with gangs. In our early 20s, one got out and became a cop, and one got in deeper and became a pimp. He was still invited to parties and holidays, was still included in family events. He was still loved by his family. His crimes got more and more extreme until he was finally charged with repeatedly raping one of his prostitutes. She was not yet 13. So he was charged with 4 counts of abuse of a child. There was a rumor going around our friend group that the charge was not real and that the whole thing was trumped up by his baby mama. I asked the brother about it and his exact words were, "I wish that was true." No, they have DNA. The cop brother was devastated. The pimp is now in jail for life, and the brother does not talk about him at all. I worked with a man whose son robbed, tortured, and killed an old lady in her home with 2 other men. His son is the one that actually killed the lady too. He wasn't able to come to terms with it and was in denial for a while. Eventually his son was convicted and sent to prison and he never spoke about his son again. He did have a really sweet daughter that seemed to have a good head on her shoulders. The dad turned all his attention on her and was very proud of that one he raised. I had a classmate who committed a hit and run. He killed 2 people, a rickshaw driver and his passenger. His father, a very rich garment factory owner, sent his son to the UK to escape the very same day, bribed the police to not put a bolo out, and sent his lawyers to discuss terms with the victim's family. One of the victim decides to press charges. The case is still ongoing and the last time I saw my classmate's IG story, he is partying in London. A good friend of mine's son set fire to a house and ended up killing 4 children and left the mother in a coma. The son did not mean to murder anyone, but is now in prison for the rest of his life. The father, my friend, committed suicide 2 years ago. Absolute tragedy for everyone involved, especially the mother who lost all of her children. Edit. At this point people have figured out who I am talking about and where it happened. I won't be sharing any personal details about names and the specifics out of respect for everybody involved. RIP to everyone and to D. I hope he's doing alright wherever he is now. Edit 2. Quite a few people are upset with me saying he did not mean to murder anyone. I will say that he absolutely intended to set fire to the house. It was no accident, but did not have the intentions of killing them innocent children. This was a nightmare for both the victim's family and my friend's family, who ultimately started drinking heavily after what his son had done and then decided he had enough. Not quite the answer for OP'd out, but my brother shot and killed my father after he refused to keep giving him money because he knew he was spending it on drugs, alcohol. Closing in on a year since it happened and I am still swimming and sometimes it doesn't feel real. Trial hasn't started yet, but the defense is self-defense. When he walked into a house my dad and other brother were remodeling and shot them both. Other bro got wounded and the gun jammed before he could finish my brother off. Edit. I am doing fine. I have a fantastic support system, wife, other family and co-workers. Thank all you internet strangers for your concern. It really is touching and restored some of my faith in humanity. My other brother recovered from the GSW, but he has more mental anguish about the situation than I do. But he was literally there when it happened. My parents shot and killed my sister and made it look like a suicide. So this doesn't answer Op's question, but it fits the reverse. To answer that question, it has affected me for my entire life. Not in a good way. It happened 30 plus years ago and not a day goes by that I don't think of her. She was 13. I was 8. Love you, Kathy. I went to private school with a kid who brutally murdered one of our nuns. I believe his parents, who are in and from the Ukrainian, basically just let US handle it and never fought for their son. Pretty sure he's somewhere in prison, maximum security type thing. This was back in like 2002ish. The detective who handled the murder wrote a book about it. Pretty intense stuff. My mom just did a podcast interview about Inan and the whole thing, as she was one of the first people on site after they found the body. This reminds me about the old Reddit thread written by the father of the demon son. Does anyone know which I am talking about? It's a profound example of this exact situation. Not a relative but a fellow student. Popular guy in my class who sat behind me in homeroom and had the locker next to mine. After having an argument with his mother about his grades and him getting a job to help support them, he shot and killed her with a revolver he apparently purchased from someone at our school. This happened on a Friday. He hid her body in the apartment under a pile of clothes and a TV, and threw parties there on Saturday and Sunday. On Monday and Tuesday, he came to school like nothing happened. Then Wednesday, he used her car and credit cards to go on a road trip. It wasn't until Thursday that the apartment manager found the body after multiple neighbors complained about a smell. It really freaked people out that he did it. Even more so for those who got invited to the party. And the evidence that was brought to trial made parents start to question how the school system could have prevented it. As of writing this, he has about another decade to go on his sentence. Other way around. I was friends growing up with a brother and sister whose dad paid a hitman to kill their mom. Hitman shot the mom but she survived. There was a mountain of evidence that the dad was behind it, but the sister denied all of it. Stayed on her dad's side. Helped coordinate his defense. Complete denial that I never understood. Especially because it alienated her from her mom. Denied it even after he was convicted of the crime. The brother on the other hand saw reality and is still close with his mom. But doesn't talk to his dad or sister. It's strange the lengths some people will go to reject reality to protect their preconceptions. Not me, but another person. I was on a jury and they were asking us if any family members had been involved in a violent crime. A woman came forward indicating her son had assaulted his wife and served time because of it. The prosecutor asked if she felt he had been treated fairly by the system. A woman without missing a beat says, yes, he was. Stating that she taught him right from wrong. That he chose wrong and deserved to be punished. Amazing woman. I instantly had immense respect for Harris. Not a parent, but I have a sibling who is in prison for double homicide. They murdered a girl who I had gone to elementary school with and her father after a botched band. They also seriously injured the mother and threatened the other child. I watched my mother, who was already arguably unstable, fall victim to deep depression and severe anxiety. She now suffers from agoraphobia and has severe trust issues and few friends. She still keeps in touch with my sibling on a weekly basis. Capital I, however, haven't spoken to them since I turned 18 and was given a choice. So to speak to how she handled it, not well. She spent years in therapy that I personally don't think resolved much. I think she still has the mentality of that's my child, but I can't wrap my head around that. I certainly prefer to think of myself as an only child. Sorry for the vaguish details, but I didn't want to get too specific about it. My uncle was part of the English Hells Angels. He got 15 years for armed robbery with an Uzi. Absolutely nicest man to family you would ever know until you actually grow up and hear the real stories. Beyond insane how truly evil the man was. My brother used to have bad anger issues when he was drunk, and would sometimes end up fighting people because of it. One night we came home wasted and were trying to sleep for work, but our neighbor was shouting and arguing with his daughter out the front of their house. Fed up with the noise, my bro takes an empty beer bottle, walks outside, breaks the bottle on their mailbox, and stabs him in the neck. He snaps out of his rage. A moment later, after seeing the blood pouring out of this guy's neck, he calls an ambulance and the police and tells the daughter to keep pressure on her dad's neck, while he walks home and wakes us up to tell us what he just did. Our neighbor ended up dying on the way to the hospital. The court case dragged out for 1.5 years, with my parents eventually getting divorced after the sentencing because of their clashing views of their son. My dad felt like he had failed as a father and could never come to terms with what my bro did. My mom, however, and felt like we should come together for him and try as often as we could to visit him. It's been 6 years since then and it still haunts me. I can't seem to shake this deep feeling of guilt that I have. I was the one that dragged him to come out drinking that night, knowing how violent he gets. But as bad as I feel right now, it will never compare to that girl losing her father right in front of her. My brother molested me throughout my childhood. Both of my parents are still in denial. Edit. I appreciate everyone who has been through the same thing and greatly empathize. If it's okay, please do not share details of your abuse with me. Multiple people have done this and it's very triggering. While we do share this pain, sharing details of your pain activates my pain. I really appreciate your understanding and hope everyone is in treatment to recover from this trauma. not a parent. But this video would be worth checking out. It's a talk by the mother of one of the Columbine shooters. Got a feel good story for you. Maybe not unspeakable, but certainly worth sharing. My brother was not a good kid by any means. Stole a motorcycle, aggressively rode around town, and intentionally drove by the police station in my county to antagonize the police. Dude was better on two wheels than his own two legs, both joking and dead serious at the same time. So he thought in his head there was no chance he got caught. Well, he didn't get caught. He evaded the police for hours. He was an absolute jackass. But his little escapade made some headlines and he was later turned in by some friends who clearly knew it was him. My dad went to court and said his son, my brother, was responsible for his actions. Under no circumstances should he have done that and his crime should be met with an adequate amount of jail time. He left the courtroom saying this: he's a good son at home. He may not be a good kid, but he's a really good man, and I know this time will serve him well. Fast forward, he spent some time in jail, got kicked out of public school for this crime and was forced into a more aggressive probationary school system. He graduated, got his it together, married an amazing woman, and is now the best father you'd ever imagine. Doesn't glorify his rambunctious days, doesn't dabble in any drugs, nothing like that. His life revolves around his kids. Truly a good man and a great father. For anyone out there that needs to hear this, people grow. You can grow. Your past doesn't always define your future. A family friend was murdered by his neighbor's 30-year-old son. The neighbor's son was on the run from police and high on meth. He broke into my family friend's home and hid until my family friend was in his basement doing laundry, high on meth. The neighbor's son jumps my family friend and stabbed him in the back 9 times, then shot him twice. He covers my family friend's body with a sheet, then goes upstairs and barricades the door so no one can get in, then goes upstairs to the master bedroom, sits down in the closet, and blows his head off. Police found him with the gun still in his hand. We found out months later that the family of the neighbor's son was telling people that he was a gentle person and that he was innocent. It's unbelievable to me how denial works. This person had so many prior offenses including drugs and assault. He had spent time in prison before. I truly believe he killed himself because he didn't want to go back, not out of remorse. When I was in middle school, there was a kid who was mentally challenged. He spent much of his time destroying stuff in the playground. One day he came to school with a lighter and took it out in the playground and started burning butterfly. It was pretty horrific for 11-year-old me and he was suspended for about 4 days. He spiraled out of control in HS when he started burning animals like kittens and rabbits. It was pretty ducked up. His parents had seemed to given up on him and never actually told him to stop. 4 years ago he was arrested for homicide and murder of a family of 6. He lit their house on fire with gasoline and a blowtorch. It was all up in the local news. In court, he said that the family gave him inhumane looks and said bad remarks about him which made him angry. He followed them home from the local park and burned the house at 1 AM. He was sentenced to 56 years in special care prison because he had a mental disability. At first his parents didn't react to it, almost as if they expected it. But a year later the father committed suicide and the mom got Alzheimer's. It was pretty sad, so hear about the whole ordeal and especially about the father who was a pretty nice guy. I'm not the parent, but my father kidnapped, raped a woman. He then ran from the police for about a week, and when they cornered him he committed suicide. Having a family member so close to you commit such a heinous crime is difficult to process. You have to rethink everything you ever thought about them. Well, I never had a great opinion of my father. He was extremely abusive. Even so, I never thought he would do something as bad as that. I reacted pretty much the only way I could, which was distancing myself from the situation. It became a pretty big deal for a few months after. It seemed like everyone in my city was talking about it. People I didn't even know were reaching out and offering their sympathy. It was a pleasant surprise that most people were kind and didn't try to make me feel bad. I have pretty much come to accept what has happened with little emotion, although I'm still haunted by the fact that an innocent woman had to be victimized by his evil acts. A couple of cousins of mine beat their friend up in their living room while drunk high, culminating in one of them hitting the guy in the head with an unopened beer can. They woke up in the morning and the guy was still there in the living room, head split open, cold, dead, and with their dog licking his face. They cut him to pieces in the bathtub and disposed of the body in a local fishing lake. Someone went fishing one day and caught a leg, complete with tattoo. They ended up in prison. I'm not sure how it happened, but one of them died in his cell. The other is still locked up. We don't talk about them much, but it's something I think about from time to time. A guy 2 classes above raped my girlfriend. He got charged with measly 1 year with probation and 200 social hours. Unfortunately, my girlfriend couldn't handle it and committed suicide 4 years ago. Can't wait to read a 14-year-old writing fan fiction in this comment section. My brother is a bank robber who, after serving time, followed that up with arson. SWAT tracked him down. Live on evening news. Had relatives calling me from different continents. My employer requires a high security clearance. Security manager damn near lost his mind when I disclosed. Addendum. It seems to go with a great deal of these posts the parents of the offender swear by all the saints and holy relics their offspring is innocent. I didn't think to add that part with my middle of the night post. My mother swore brother did not syrup that bank. He took me to the ER for stitches on that date. My brother was never held accountable for any of his misdeeds that escalated throughout his teens, which led to the failed bank heist. I looked my mom in the eyes and said there are security camera photos of him that are date and time stamped. She'd just walk away from me. Stepfather too. He'd bitch about home but would always give him money because of course. Regarding the arson, he and his GF had an altercation. She kicks him out of the house. He get drunk, high returns with full gas cans, yes plural, and completely douses the exterior of the home. Breaks in the house, while GF and her adult son inside, and go room to room dumping gas. GF and her son lock themselves in a room. SWAT, fire depth and cops roll up. I watch from my home, 3k miles away on their local news, the entire circus play out with his arrest. There is more, but damns, why? I haven't seen or spoke to him in over 10 years. I take assignments overseas so he or my other family members can't just roll up and drop into Civisit. Want nothing to do with them. One of the employees at the golf club I go to took his son in when he got out of prison for gang-related violence. Poor guy has schizophrenia and they were trying to help him. A few weeks ago the guy never showed up to his shift. They sent a wellness check as he never missed a shift without calling in 20 years. Police found him and his wife murdered by their son who still hasn't been found. Not me, but my aunt. My aunt has a son whom was 13 when he decided to abuse my 1-year-old little sister. At this point they had been living with my dad and stepmom with my baby sister for a few months. My stepmom walks in on him over her while she's sleeping with her diaper on the floor and his pants completely down. And he didn't stop until she lunged for him and started beating him. My stepmom was the only adult in the house, so her first instinct was to call the cops as my cousin ran away. My aunt left work early and when she heard my stepmom laid hands on her son, she called the cops on my stepmom. They didn't arrest her because of the situation and picked him up hours later. After they took my little sister to the doctor, they were able to see that she definitely wasn't a virgin, but that there were also no signs of trauma, which meant he had already been doing it for a bit. My father and stepmom were devastated and kicked my aunt out and pressed charges. My aunt was in denial and decided to press charges on all of us. On my dad for raping her when she was little. On my brother for raping my cousin. Brother lived with father's brother. Baby cousin when he was a preteen and my little cousin was 3/4. On my older sister Isabel, also a preteen, for raping my little cousin's father's brother's son. Brother when he was 2/3. On my other sister for raping her son. Sister was a preteen and her son was about 6/7. And on me for raping my father's other brother's daughter. I was about 14 and my little cousin was about 5/6 when I lived with her. Needless to say, none of it stuck and there was no proof any of us raped anyone. My father disowned my aunt. And while her son went away for a few months, she continued to make our lives hell and even got my father fired from his job. Till this day she's still a piece of it. And last time I checked, my cousin is now graduating HS with a GF and everything. My dad forgave them, but my stepmom will still never go around them and hates my aunt. I hate her too. Back in the late 1970s, my brother, 11 months younger, and I were molested by a 18-year-old high school boy in our neighborhood. He took us out behind the house next door, empty, and forced us to do unspeakable things. I was 5 years old at the time, and had no idea what was happening to us. I remember watching him brutalize my little 4-year-old brother, and I began screaming for him to please stop. He threw my brother to the ground and began taking it out on me. When he was finished, he threw a weighted up $5 bill at my brother and said, "You'll tell anyone and I'll kill you." My mom saw the $5 on my brother and asked how we got the money. When I told my parents what had happened to us, they knew who the young guy was, from our church. My dad called the parents, told them what happened, and they asked my parents to come over. In a surreal dreamlike experience, my parents took us to their home, where they forced my brother and I to sit at the dining table with him while they all discussed events, and then made him apologize to us for what he did to us. Then we went home, and never spoke of it again. I spent the next 30-something years struggling with major anxiety, depression, trust issues, sexual identity crisis, self-hate, self-harming, suicidal thoughts and attempts, years of drug and alcohol addiction. As an adult, I got up the courage to ask my parents about it. They remember nothing. I would not say I have or ever will recover fully, but I have a much better life now. I married the love of my life and she has given me 4 gorgeous children. We live a very happy life. I live in great fear every day something like that may happen to my children, because I would murder anyone who hurt my children. My childhood best friend. We had a falling out through junior high and high school. Had a full ride scholarship to a university for playing football. He got hung up on ditching classes and partying all day every day. 2 months after he started his college career, he was driving home drunk and killed a man. Not just any man. A man who was leaving an AA meeting. He was a sponsor and had been sober for 11 years. My friend swerved onto the sidewalk and killed him on the spot as he was leaving the meeting. My friend's mom was so devastated. He was a great guy when we were kids and he was a trophy child. He tried fleeing but got caught. His parents ended up separating and last I heard he's jobless and doing drugs. A perfect family ruined because partying and drinking and driving was important. Absolutely horrifying. I couldn't bring myself to say anything besides "I'm sorry" and a hug when I went to their house. Such an upsetting situation all around. I grew up across the road from 2 sisters who killed a man, cut him into pieces and dumped him in a river. Apparently he had been assaulting their mother and they stabbed him a load of times and then chopped him up and put him in a suitcase. Crazy methodicas. My neighbor is an elderly woman and her son is a double rapist attempted murderer. This happened in the 90s, so when he got out recently, he moved in with her. She's in denial and trusts him completely. No warning from the police that he was moving in, but he is on the registered sex offenders website. Needless to say, tension has been high around the neighborhood in regards to this man, and I no longer feel safe walking alone past their house. My aunt and uncle's son killed his wife, 2 kids and then himself. He was never ever mentioned after that day. His name was never to be said. They will not even acknowledge he existed. Was not even listed in my uncle's obit when he passed. Just simply erased from the family history. Worked with a guy, older, late 50s, very nice and honest. I once dropped my wallet in the bathroom. He found about an hour later and gave it to me. His son killed a friend after an argument, chopped him up and hid the body in the sump pump well in my co-worker's basement. My co-worker found out when the police on a tip came with a warrant and found the body. Still a nice guy but never happy. Not parent, but sibling. And the crime was using a laserjet printer to make counterfeit dollar bills. Stacks and stacks of counterfeit dollar bills. He two-side printed almost an entire ream's worth of paper with 6 bills per page. Ducker was rich, but he ducked up because the front and back were a little offset. So when he cut them out they never lined up correctly. I mean, the fact that they were on office supply paper was probably a bigger jiveway. But if you're going to counterfeit money, get IT right. Anyway, the Safeway store figured it out right away and wouldn't let him buy the big stack of candy he wanted. They called my dad, who was very disappointed, but for some reason still purchased the candy. WTF, Dad? My brother was grounded and ate all the candy while stuck in his room. We still have the money and use it instead of the white $1 bills when we play Monopoly. I contend that this counts as an unspeakable crime because we never speak about it. Except when we're playing Monopoly, in which case it's always, hey, you remember when Jeff tried to use these to buy every ducking Snickers at the old Safeway? And then dad had to come bail him out of grocery store jail? And he still got to eat all the ducking Snickers and didn't give us any? Do you remember that? Jeff, where's my ducking Snickers? Jeff, huh, where is it? My former friend had a son kicked out of college due to facing abuse charges on a classmate. She isn't wealthy, but purposefully lived in a wealthy area to be close to private schools, in which she got her kids scholarships based on financial need. She overshared his version of the story on social media and made it look very he said she said. She received tens of thousands from friends for legal fees. Her oversharing was making sense though. So I looked up the case, which was covered in the media where the school is, and the evidence appeared very damning from the victim's perspective. I don't know the legal outcome because I stopped communicating with her over this, and I have no desire to look it up. But I know damn well she will deny her son is a rapist for the rest of her life. Not me, but my childhood neighbor's dad. My family grew up with their family and I was extremely close with the oldest girl. Parents both drank a lot, but as a child I just saw it as them being fun, cool parents. Flash forward a few years. Mom and dad were drunk driving from one bar to the next when they hit a 20-year-old kid on a moped and then fled the scene. The kid was severely injured but would have lived had they not left him there. My family woke up the next day to police surrounding their house. Sirens and all. The police were only able to locate them because they had hit the poor kid so hard that their license plate had imprinted onto the side of his moped. This was about 8 years ago now, I believe. Dad is out of jail, was only in for a year thanks to them being an affluent family, and the whole family acts as though he was never in jail and never did anything bad. They post pictures with loving ooey gooey captions all the time, still trying to maintain the image of the perfect nuclear family. I don't know how they do it. I wouldn't even be able to look my dad in the eyes if he had ran someone over and left them to die on the street.